This episode is brought to you by World of Tanks, the free-to-play multiplayer tank combat game accessible to anyone, whether you're a novice or a pro. You'll jump into the arena and experience the same thrill as 100 million other players. Take command of the most iconic tanks and military vehicles of the 20th century. Tank destroyers, artillery, light, medium, and heavy tanks are ready for you to take control of and destroy the enemy. Experience tactical gameplay, teamwork, progression trees, and other rewards with 600 plus historically accurate tanks from 11 nations with over 40 maps available. Sign up using the link in the description below and use the code ONCEUPON-A-TANK to get the Matilda Black Prince Tier 5, 7 days of World of Tanks premium access, 1 garage slot and a 100% trained crew, and rent 2 legendary tanks for 10 battles each, including the Tiger 131 and its opponent, the Sherman Firefly. Code valid for new players. The Ansaldo MIAS MORAS Mini-Tank. Strangest tanks in history. 1935. In the history of warfare, there have been a vast number of weapons that were remembered more for their awkward design than for their practicality. The majority of these weapons never went beyond the drawing table. They were either rendered obsolete or utterly impractical to bring to life. One such weapon was the 1935 Italian armored motorized assault machine gun vehicle known as the MIAS. After the Fascist Party rose to power, the Italian army commenced a plan for a vast military expansion. During the 1930s, the Italian ordnance industry carried out a number of innovative projects in all fields of weapon construction. They would become the basis for the Italian army's arsenal throughout World War II. The largest Italian arms producer, which sometimes worked in cooperation with Fiat, was the Ansaldo company from Genoa. Ansaldo, a metallurgical giant in the Italian economy, was a leader in the production of artillery weapons prior to and after the First World War. During the period between the two world wars, they were also known for the production of AA guns, tank hulls, and turrets. The MIAS tank, also one of their projects, was certainly not one they would be remembered for. During the 1920s and 30s, the concept of static warfare was still very much alive in military strategies across the globe. Even though mobile warfare tactics were becoming more of a dominant military theory, the lessons learned in the First World War were still shaping the minds of the world's military leaders. The most significant problem of this static warfare concept was how to reach the enemy across no man's land with minimal casualties. With this in mind, the Ansaldo engineers came up with the idea of creating a small armored car armed with a machine gun that would allow soldiers to assault the enemy positions while protected. The results of this research were the MIAS and MORAS mini-tanks. In essence, the MIAS was a motorized mobile shield, a small armored box mounted on top of tank treads. The front steel plate was the thickest part of the armor and was designed to protect against Mauser 7.92 armor-piercing rounds fired at a 90-degree angle from a distance of 54 yards, or 50 meters. During the First World War, this round was used extensively by the German forces and was capable of penetrating armor plates of up to 0.55 inches or 14 millimeters in thickness. The side plates were somewhat thinner and provided protection only against the standard Italian 6.5 millimeter round fired under the same conditions as the armor-piercing round. The roof was of the same thickness and consisted of 2 parts because the back part could be elevated for additional protection. There were no panels on the rear or bottom of the vehicle. The exact dimensions of the MIAS tank are unknown, but the hull would have been large enough to house a soldier in a crouching position. Ansaldo's purpose in designing a tank of this size was for it to present a smaller target profile while keeping the occupant safe from enemy fire. The MIAS was powered by a 250cc Frera gasoline engine, which is normally used in motorcycles. With 5 horsepower and 3 speeds, 2 forward and 1 reverse, it provided a top speed of 3 miles per hour, or 5 kilometers an hour, going forward, and 1.4 miles per hour, or 2.2 kilometers per hour, in reverse. The tracks were made of high-strength steel links, and the driver used a special lever as the steering mechanism. The tension of the tracks was regulated by simply moving the return wheel forward or backward. The MIAS was one of 2 versions designed by the Ansaldo company. It was armed with 2 Scotty 6.5mm machine guns. The machine guns were fixed to a box on the front plate that allowed 24 degrees of elevation control as well as 10 degrees of movement from side to side. Inside the hull, the driver had 1,000 rounds at their disposal, packed into 40 separate magazines. The second version was designated as the Morass. It had exactly the same construction features as the MIAS, but it was armed with a 45 caliber Brixia rapid-firing mortar. The mortar was also fixed to the front plate and had an 82-degree range of elevation. Like the machine guns, it could also swing 5 degrees to each side. The ammunition consisted of 50 grenades and 50 launch cartridges, which were packed into special boxes inside the hull. There were a number of glaring problems regarding the MIAS MORAS project. One of those was certainly the awkward design, as the MIAS did not have a seating area for the operator. Instead, the driver had to crouch walk as the tank maneuvered. It was quite an unusual situation that asked for a lot of effort on the crewman's part. The most important problem was that the entire concept of a motorized mobile shield was soon to be obsolete in the coming age of mechanized warfare. Even in the case of static warfare, the MIAS would have hardly posed a threat to the enemy. Being a very slow vehicle, the MIAS would have been an easy target for enemy fire and artillery. Because of these issues, the entire project was cancelled before it progressed from the prototype stage. Therefore, the MIAS and MORAS mini-tanks remain one of the most awkward weapon designs in the history of warfare. This episode was brought to you by World of Tanks. Sign up and use the code ONCEUPONATANK to get World of Tanks and those tanks including the Tiger 131. Download link in the description below.